Hello, everyone. So today we're going to be seeing the problem tree method and how this can help you in analyzing problems. So what we are going to be covering is what is the problem tree, how do we use the method, and again we'll look at some examples towards the end of this. So when I introduce the problem tree to you, what we're going to do is we're just going to see some generic trees, then we'll see how we can break down the method, and then we will see how we can, how people have worked with different types of, examples that may be more related to your specific case. So what is the problem tree? So the problem tree is, in essence, a very simple tool. It looks something like this. It has a trunk, which is where you write sort of the core problem you're interested in, and then you try to map out in the branches of the tree sort of the effects of the problem, right? What could those effects be? And then under it, you try and map the root causes, and then these would then be the roots of the problem. So a typical problem tree analysis would be something like this, right? So here the example is the core problem is of encroachment into protected areas. So encroachment by populations into a protected forest area where people are starting to enter, right? So it's creating some kind of conflict. And what does this lead into? So the effects of this problem is that there is the protective authority, that is the, let's say, the police force, or the forest police and the local community around them, tensions between them. Then there is the increased conflict between human and wildlife, just because they're moving into protected nature reserves. There's loss of biodiversity, there's loss of revenue for the forest office, and there's also polarization of ethnic groups that could happen. And if you then look at the root causes of this, you would see a lot of different types of root causes. So it could be that there is an insufficient natural resource base, right? So that is why people are moving or encroaching into that protected area, because they need those resources. And if you think about why that is the case, well, that's because there's rising population pressure. There are more people that live there than that used to a few years ago, and therefore they needed to expand, and they didn't have any area to expand, so they expanded to the protected area. It could also be because of disputed land ownership. And then you could say, well, because the land is not well marked, and therefore it causes sort of different people don't know which is my land and which is not, and therefore they accidentally encroach, right? And it could also be incompatible land use. The way the geography hasn't been really understood. And then you could say it's also weak enforcement from the forest police, for example. And why is there weak enforcement? Well, it could be because of poor salaries, for example, or it just could be that there's poor regulations around the space, or poor guidelines of how they're supposed to enforce the protected area. There could also be the fact that the protected area was created without consulting the ethnic groups living in the area already, and therefore they were forced out of that area, which then creates more rivalry and ethnic issues. So these are really different types of causes that you can see that go into these effects. But what is interesting is that each of these causes have sub-causes, and each of these sub-causes may have further sub-causes. And if you actually dive down into each of these causes, you actually get into the root of the problem. And that is the essence of the problem tree, right? It tries and maps for you what are effects, what are the root causes, and therefore what is the, so you get a better understanding of the problem space around you. If you really think what the problem tree is used for, it's used for identifying multiple problems within a challenge area, analysis of the causes and effects of an issue or a problem, diving deep to understand the root cause of a problem, and then seeing how different problems sometimes connect with each other, and therefore getting a holistic picture of an issue together. And by together, I mean this is together as a group where you're trying to get these holistic pictures, right? And this is sort of a really holistic picture of the problem, where you're looking at all the effects and all the different causes that could be, feeding into this, right? However, it's also important to know what the problem tree is not used for. So you do not use it to identify solutions within a challenge area. If I go back to this example, here you can see that there are no solutions that are provided here. You could try and come up with solutions for each of the problems problems or the causes that you have put in here, or the sub causes, and then you could say, okay, maybe we can figure out compatible land uses. Maybe we can increase salaries of the staff to have better enforcement. Each of them is a specific solution for that particular cause that is identified, but the tree itself does not list these solutions. So that is important, that you do not use the tree to identify solutions. Secondly, you also don't say that one problem is better or stronger than the other. That is, in this method, all problems are generally rated as equally important, right? So again, if you look at here, we're not saying that one problem is better than the other, but all the problems that that are sort of feeding the core problem is what you are doing, you are listing. And then you can apply different techniques to grade the depth and the magnitude of the problems of interest, right? And we can sort of see what those techniques are a little later, but that's again something that you do later, not when you build the tree in the start. And then the other thing that you of course don't do is getting stuck to a single problem. So if you only have one cause under it, then that you have really are not you're not really doing the root cause properly. If that's the case, consider moving that into the trunk of the tree and then saying, okay, what are the causes that is your core problem for, right? So again, it's really, this method is to generate multiple problems and to see all the problems and how they connect around it, right? And this is what we use it for. So that's the problem tree in its essence. And now we're going to see how we use the method, right? So how are you going to apply this for your particular problem of interest? So first of all, it's very important to understand where the problem tree sits in the design thinking process you're going through, right? And if we define this process here, as you can see that you have, you start with the problem and you end with the solution in the end, there is a space here where you have to get with the problem definition. The problem tree actually lies in the early phase of the problem exploration and not here where you are defining the problem. So that's very important to understand. Now, if you might remember that this is also something, this design thinking has this kind of divergent and convergent thinking approaches. And in this divergent thinking, you are expanding choice. So you create a lot of choice for yourselves. And that's what the problem tree is doing. You're creating choice. And then you will apply filters to narrow your choice, to figure out what is the problem you want and what is the problem definition. And then you will start to brainstorm solutions and do the same way, come up with multiple solutions and find a single solution to end with a specific solution, right? So that's what we are going to be doing. So if you look at the tree, I've sort of listed some instructions that are going to help you do the problem tree in a very systematic way. So first of all, the best start is to identify and discuss existing problems in the domain of interest. And you do this by listing out the problems that interest you individually, share those problems together, and then vote on the one that you can all agree on. Then you define a core problem and add to the trunk of the tree that this is the problem we have chosen, and you start with the trunks. You always start with the trunk. Once you have done that, you start listing some first order causes of the problem, and then explore both social, economic, political causes that can include attitude, behaviors, and other factors, and start adding them to the roots. And then also think about the consequences of that problem and start adding to the branches, which is the effects space, right? And in this effect space, you may also connect the consequences if you feel they connect to each other. And then you start going into the roots even deeper, so into second order causes. And you do this by using this technique, what we call the why method, where you start asking as many whys as you can to get to the root of the problem, right? So in the example that I'll just go back, I showed you earlier, where you have this insufficient natural resource base, you ask the question, why is there insufficient natural resource base? And the answer is, well, there's a rising population pressure. And then that's another cause. Then you put down the cause. Then you ask, why is there rising population pressure? And then you could say, there are multiple reasons for that. And then you put that in. There's plenty of resources around or whatever, or other reasons. Then you put those sub causes. And then you keep asking these whys until you run out of whys, essentially, right? So that's sort of the way to do it. And this can really help you to get a very broader and deeper understanding of the problem. It's also very important that at every level that you are writing, going down of the why, you write down the cause that is the reason for the why that you're asking, right? And then it would be very useful as a tip here to see if a specific cause or sub-cause, usually it's a sub-cause, that can then maybe become a trunk in its own right. And sometimes you can recreate a new problem tree from that subroot and therefore generate an even more detailed understanding of the problem, right? And this is what is the strength of this method. So once you've done that, you've filled out your problem tree, you've got it all mapped out nicely in front of you, and then you get the question, what next? And of course, what next is you want to zoom in and find the one problem that you're interested in. And what are you going to do for that, right? So I'm giving you some filters to apply, some tips in which you can find a cause that is interesting and use that cause to say that that's going to be the problem you're going to work in. So the three things you could do is see, first of all, if the cause that you have identified is one that you have knowledge or expertise in. I'm going to go back again to the example here. So for example, if you are working with human resources, then you would say, maybe this is where I want to work in. If you are working in geography, then maybe you want to select the incompatible land use. If you work in culture, then maybe you want to select the ethnicity and rivalry issues, right? So that's sort of the way that you could use to get this kind of method. Then you research around the cause of interest a little to find out the underexplored areas. And again, the less that is known, the better your chances of the problem actually becoming an opportunity for you, not a solution, an opportunity. An opportunity is something that can become, that will use some solutions in it later on, right? And then if you also can think of the impact that you can get if you were to remove or treat that cause of interest, then that is also an opportunity, right? And the larger the expected impact, the better the opportunity. If you apply these three filters, you will end up finding a very good cause and therefore problem to work with. Get consensus on this as well as perspectives from all group members. This is important so that you all agree on this. And finally, once you've done this, write an opportunity statement that incorporates your problem of interest. X, right? And without, again, thinking of any solution. This is important. Your opportunity statement cannot include a solution. An example would then be, our opportunity is to find solutions for X, the problem, right? So again, if let's say I wanted to work with incompatible land use with the previous example, I would say our opportunity is to find solutions for incompatible land usage, right? And that is, and then for the problem of, the earlier example, which was of human conflict because of people entering into protected areas. Okay, so that covers what the problem tree can do. And now let's just look at some other examples, and then we will end this session with that. We'll just quickly switch here screens so you can see the other thing that I would like to highlight. Okay, and now we are going to zoom in. So I'm actually using the tool Mural. And as you can see, this is sort of the, this is the nice problem tree that a team has created. And you can see that this is in the food space. They wanted to work with labels on processed food products, and then they started really creating a complete effect and cause map, right? And then they started thinking, okay, there's unclear labels, there's no scientific approach to the labels. Also prioritizing the food in the right eyesight, I think. And then they started listing sub-causes, and one of the sub-causes they identified was maybe the legibility of labels, right? So that they thought that was quite interesting. But in general, I think their problem was that they really, or the cause that they really cared about was unclear labels, right? So that's really the main effect, main cause that they wanted to see what it can do. So, and with that, they actually then went on and created a very good opportunity statement, which sort of looks, I think it should be here. Well, it's not here at the moment. I'll come back to it in a second. But this again shows you what the, like once you've done this, you select the problem and then you create an opportunity statement from there. So, and the way you would do that is, I would just go back and then see, and you can see here's the opportunity statement. Our opportunity is in the translation of complicated processed food ingredient labels for people who don't understand them, right? So from this tree, they have gone on to make an opportunity statement. So this is exactly what a problem tree can really help you do. And again, there are multiple ways of doing different problem trees. And just to show you some other examples, you can have something that can be as detailed as this, and this generally doesn't happen as the first tree, it normally happens in the second or third tree, or it can be, less detailed as this as well, but at least it's a good start for you to get started. So I hope with these examples, this helps you understand the problem tree method and how you can get to your opportunity statement. All the best with creating your problem trees and using this method to zoom in the problem of interest. Thank you. Bye-bye.